Hi there, my name's Gary and welcome to another how-to ambient. I'm actually sat on a park bench at Wentworth Falls Lake. It's rather noisy. We've got cars going past, we've got some workmen in the distance, and as you can hear we've got a cockatoo or two flying around. So it's going to be a challenge to create something lovely and soothing. Well, I suppose it'll be a good antidote to what should be a lovely peaceful park, but a lot of the Blue Mountains here in Australia are undergoing a lot of renovation at the moment in lots of areas. So this, I think, is number 3 in the How to Ambient series. So I'm going to, as I usually do, just talk about the intention, then go through a patch from scratch, and then do a mini performance without all the background noises coming from the real world, which always gets in the way. So intentionality, I sort of want something with a nice chordal bed that's constantly changing, as in, not just a drone that sits there, but some chords over the top. And I also want the feel of a sort of real instrument, someone playing some broken arpeggios every now and then. A little sense of dread underneath, sort of very dark sounds that come in and out quite slowly. And then probably, as the piece develops, kind of want it to get a bit more life. So I'll probably think about having like an odd time signature piano, something like that, playing. Just checking the cameras. Yeah, running. And then, because part of this is I don't like to do the generative ambient, which is you set a patch up and then you just let it do its thing and sit back, go and have a cup of tea. I do like the ones where you're constantly tweaking the sounds and even playing some bits in live. It makes it feel a bit more that there's a human element in, rather than just, admittedly you're setting things in place, which is part of the human element, and then letting the system do its own thing. But I do like to sort of play along. Right, so let's get going. So the first thing I want to do is fix my cables, which are sort of in the wrong place. My little carousel here is ordered by length of cable. So these 30 centimeter ones, and then there's, I think there are 15 next to it. Those are the majority I use, and then I've got some specialist ones. But anyway, let's get going. So the uBraids, I've loaded on the Renaissance firmware onto this, which gives you some chord modes. I don't know if you can see the CH here, which is chords, and this is a sawtooth chord mode, which I've been playing with recently. Excuse me. So I think what I'll do is take the output of that into a filter, and then the output of the filter, low pass, into channel 1 audio. Then to trigger this, I'm going to use a stepped LFO from Pam's Pro here. So a stepped LFO is basically, it's jumping up and down between waveforms, and I've currently got clock 1 here set to a stepped waveform 1/8, which is one I tend to do quite a lot. That lead's a bit short. Don't like tight leads. Excuse me. So that should be playing. Let's just make sure everything's set here. Inputs, yeah. The clock's going. So it's sending a stepped LFO into the volts per octave. It's got an out going into the filter. Oh yeah, sorry, the filter was turned down. No, in fact, what I meant to say here is not volt per octave. I actually want the stepped voltage to go into the colour slider. The colour chooses different scales, so excuse me there. So now you'll hear every 8 beats the potential for a different chord to play. Doing it manually there. Just make sure a clock's going and everything. Yeah. So I'm just changing it manually. There we go. So it's sort of kicked in. I'll just check the level, because the level of the LFO, stepped LFO on Pans Pro probably needs to be reasonably high, just so that there's enough different voltages for this modulation input to use. The other thing I'd like to do with this sound, because obviously it's pretty flat, is use some modulation on the filter. So I'm going to take into the frequency a sort of slowish unipolar. I don't know which camera is going to be best to look at for the detail. I'm guessing the GoPro. So there we go, that's sort of fading in and out. I'm going to modulate the timbre as well, which gives the chords here, these sort of chords. Goes from sort of unison and then more detuned. So I'm just going to give a little bit of probably bipolar to the timbre from a slowish opt bipolar up here. So that might do for that one. I want the range of the chords to be reasonably high frequencies, just so I've got room in the spectral range. So these are occupying the sort of middle high frequencies, which is kind of what I want, so that the spectral range, I've got some room at the bottom end to do some things as well later. So the other big element of this, I'm going to need a couple of long leads, is I'm going to use Moskwa into surface over here. So this is the CV volt per octave, and then we'll have a gate out into the trigger. And I'm going to run this in stereo, because it's got a lovely stereo field setting on it. So I'm going to put those into this side of the mixer, which is my delay mixer. So this goes through a FX8XL. If you've seen these videos before, you kind of know that. So there's the surface. So on Moskwa, I've got sort of 7 steps selected. Let's turn sorry, just so you can hear things as they come in individually. So I've got 7 steps. It's doing a random play of those 7 steps, and the probability of a skew and a ratchet is sort of set to 40% or so. The slew is set up to half. I've also got the slew mode set on this, and actually I had this, the reason this is all set up is I was doing something last night with this set like this, and the slew mode is in stepped slew, so when it goes between 2 notes, instead of just sliding, it will actually do some fast diatonic or in pitch notes. And the surface, if you can see that over here, when you increase the decay, you also increase the overall volume of surface. And it's on a string model at the moment. Later on I could switch it to a bell-like model, which might work nice with the rather transparent chords. But we'll start on the string. So that's those two elements, and obviously I can, as you know with the Moskwa, well, I don't know if you know, I can increase the speed and I can increase the range as well to give me a wider spread of notes. Oh, the other thing I've noticed, so on the Oct expander, so the Oct LFO, there's 8 bipolars there, and then there's another 16 sort of mixed bag of modulation. One of them is the trig, and I've been wondering what to do with trig, which is basically rather random, just sudden bursts of trigger, which is, like I said, kind of random, so you can't really use it for rhythmic things. But one thing you can use it for, I've noticed, and I'll choose the right one here, so use one of these triggers, is the transport. So when Moskwa receives a trigger, it stops the transport. When it receives the next trigger, it starts it again. So it's a great way of creating some silence. And as you can hear there, hopefully, let's turn that up. I'm going to make sure I get the balance right, because with the wind noise, cars, workers, cockatoos, people talking, it's kind of hard to hear what's going on sometimes. Generally you want to do ambient pieces in a lovely quiet area, and I popped down here because I was doing some other things and had the gear with me and thought, oh yeah, the lake would be lovely and peaceful, and it's a bit of a building site. Anyway, stop moaning. So what you can see here, I don't know if you can see this green light, the triggers from Oct are turning it on and off, so it's basically like play, stop, play, stop. I might try a slower one, so let's see if we can hear it stop. Right, there's a, yeah, so you can hear the pauses there. Basically we're creating pauses in the sequence, which works really well when you've got the decay set to max, because then you get these chords drifting into each other. It's very cool. Bring some chords back just to see what it sounds like with the chords. Part of the patching process is actually this. When you're setting the patch up, I'm already thinking combinations of sounds, so you know that on full decay works quite nice with the chords. When the chords fade back in, just turn up the filter slightly so we get more chordal action. The other thing I want to do, just checking the modulation here, turn down, to turn off the surface, rather than turning down 2 volumes on here, I just disconnect the trigger. I'm just listening to the organ sounds at the moment. That's kind of cool. Oh yeah, the other thing, to activate this delay, I want it to be in time with the clock, so doing my usual 1.3 clock into the sync delay input. This is in case, particularly with like the surface, so that the triggers are actually in, you know, beating in time. Got some lovely ambient soaring over there. That's cool. Right, so that's a couple of sounds. The other thing I mentioned was just some sort of dark undertone thing. So what I'm going to do is use the Godspeed and the 2 outputs of that And as you know, Godspeed is using quite a lot at the moment, just because it's got a very colourful, drony sound. So I'm going to take the sine output and put it into this VCA number 4. Let me just take this lead under here so he's out of the way. Yeah, lead management, cable management. So the sine wave's going into the VCA 4, and the odd even complex one is going to go into VCA 3, and we're going to take those two out into this just reverb only mixer from the VCAs. And just to keep track of them, I'm going to keep the left one, let's put it in that one instead. Input 3, the left one on the left side and the right one on the right side. So now we should have like the sine folded waveform on one side of the stereo, and then the odd even more complex waveform. I'm just modulating on the Godspeed here on that side. So let's do one sound at a time. This should be a C. I can check with the chords. So a C is going to be like a root droning sound. Yeah, when it's in the lower octave, the Godspeed, new Godspeed, sorry, it's sometimes hard to know the pitch. You need a bit of higher harmonics. Just for the moment, just so we can hear it before I switch it, and I'll leave it in the higher range. So the complex oscillator, I'm going to modulate the FM index, which is probably best from a unipolar. Well, I can hardly hear it. I'll just turn it up because the background noises are so crazy. Right, so that should be modulating. Not much modulation. Oh, it'd help if I plug it in. Right, that just gives a little variation to that side, and then the fold on the sine wave, that sort of tone, again quite a slow. We'll have a slow, I'll use a short lead, slow, slightly random triangle from this one. See what it sounds like. Again, I'm just modulating the two sides of this Godspeed output. Both of them contain the sub-oscillator. That's probably why it can work keeping it in that higher octave. So that's a bit fast. Let's just have a slower modulation. So that's the two of them together, and like I said, that's going to sit underneath the chords. Oh, it's actually got big lorries going past as well. That's crazy. So these two will be droning, the new Godspeed, and then the uBraids 2 will be just playing different chords over the top. Just move these leads out of the way. Right. That's the trigger. Sorry, I'm just thinking a bit later I'm going to be using the keyboard, so these long leads are in the way. So the other thing with these drones is you can't just have them sitting there like that. So we need to modulate the VCAs. That's the whole point of putting them through these two VCAs. So I'm going to take a medium speed bipolar for this one. Right, notice it's quite regular, so I've started to do this more and more now, which is to modulate the whole oct, so to give a variety of just take an LFO from this 2HP LFO here and then modulate the speed of the opt, which is controlling, as you know, the whole 24 with the expander. So now the rate of this, as this increases, the whole speed of the opt will speed up and slow down, which is kind of what we want. That way you don't end up with just these constant modulation tempos. Likewise, we'll take a slightly slower bipolar into the other VCO for the sine wave, VCA, sorry. Excuse me if I get words wrong, I'm just ploughing through this, and there's actually workmen slightly behind me now wondering what I'm doing. Right, so there we go, slower modulation on the sine with the sub out. And the two together, because the VCA is being lifted up and down at different times, create that tone. Obviously this works with a little bit of, around the back of the camera, a lot of this reverb. I'm going to use this choral reverb, which is a favourite at the moment, and I'm also going to modulate the choral reverb type, so you're going to different sort of vowel sounds. Nice thing about the F8 XLs is you can modulate any of the controls here. So let's just listen to the sine wave bit by itself. The nice thing about these Doppler 130/-2 VCAs is you've got control over a constant gain. So if I turn the gain up here, you could just have it constant, and then you can sort of drop it back a bit and then bring the CV amount in so that you have a bass level and then a modulated level above that. So that's good for, you know, not getting rid of the whole thing completely if you don't want to. Likewise, it's also a good way of balancing, so you can hear the odd even waveforms relatively louder, so I can actually balance that on the VCA itself, both the CV and the bass level. So let's see what those drones sound like. Drop them down, put them behind the chords. And remember, the chords are being modulated primarily through the filter, so I can adjust the VCF amount there. And also I've got some resonance if I want to go crazy. I think with this particular filter you do need the the resonance on a certain amount before you can even hear it. Well, let's bring in the we'll find the cable. Bring in the surface. See what that's doing. So if I want to slow down the drones coming in and out, because they're a little, what's the word, peaky, I'm going to use, just move a few things around here and have them in the slower LFOs from the slower bipolars. I'll make the vowel sound a bit faster and also the timbre a bit faster. So now we'll get less of the drone coming in and out, which is kind of good because it's filling up the bass end of the piece. Right, and with ambient music, you don't want it to be, what's the word, too many layers. We've already got a couple of drones, the chords, the surface, which is not that. Just turn the drones down a little bit. And then I'm also thinking of adding this piano sound. So let's get a stereo out of the Disting. Again, I don't want this to be too dominant either, so the stereo out because it does work in stereo, and MIDI into its little MIDI expander. And then to think of a style for this. To some extent, you just want occasional things coming in and out, and this might be one I can play in manually. Actually responding to what the modular is doing, particularly the chords, and filling in the gaps, say for example on the surface. The other thing I can do is, as I've shown you before, I've got MIDI out going from the PAMS Pro, which is going through this interface here for the Q Nexus, which actually keeps me in time. Obviously there's not much of a beat going on here, so perhaps something we can perhaps think about rhythms in a second, but I can actually program in, it's really hard to see the lights on here, these looping sequences. This one's a 7-step one, and change them on the fly, which is even better. Extreme Panda Drones, it's hard to, obviously when you put more reverb on, it has the tendency to just make it spread across the stereo, so it's, oh, that's a nice high one. With the sequencing, let's turn all the other stuff off just so we know what's going on. So you can see it's getting a bit busy already. So have we got everything off? Oh yeah, surface is just on infinite decay. So this one I can actually hold a note. So if I wanted to start, was that a train going past? Christ, it's all happening. Yeah. So with this, you can see I can just have occasional notes looping, so, and then add in more notes to increase the complexity. And then take it back again to one note. And then also just delete the loop. It will still keep timing, and it's still in record and play, so when I want to introduce it again, clear it. Right, so that's that element. The other thing I was mentioning was possibly some kind of rhythm. So rather than using kick and hi-hats and things like that, let's use a kind of Euclidean odd thing on the ornament, via the ornament and crime. So I'm going to take output 4 from PAMS into the Euclidean. I think it's set to a Euclidean. It's a probability divider at the moment. Well, let's try that. It's extremely hard to see that actually. So what I could do is actually, because PAMS Pro's got a Euclidean built in anyway, so I can just see that a bit better. With these, because the sun's blasting into my face at the moment, I'm going to end up with a suntan. The ornament and crime's not got a very bright screen, so it's not brilliant in daylight like this, whereas PAMS Pro is at least a bit better. So I'm going to put PAMS Pro into Pico Drum 2, and we'll have that going into a bit of a... I think that's the ducks you can hear. Really? Yeah. Sorry. So I'll have this drum 2, which is like a multi-model drum thing, into audio level 2. So let's see what 4's doing. It's currently at ×1 speed. So let's make it ×2 speed. I'm going to try and put in like a Euclidean rhythm and see what I'm doing. So square wave, 50%, which is fine. The phase, probability. So Euclidean steps, let's make it 16 step Euclidean rhythm. How many triggers? We'll have choosing wrong. Triggers will have like 5 within those 16. Now we just need to see what this is set to. So you can hear we're getting this sort of odd beat. It might be nice with the delay. Let's get a... Okay, so that's sort of a tommy sound. Might be nice to tune that. We could modulate it as well, but let's find a... Well, that was lucky. So the parameter 1 here is a tuning. I just hit it by accident. And then we just want a probability of any of these Euclideans firing. If I make it, say 6 within the 16. A bit of tripping up is probably not good for ambient. So let's go back to probability, which is always your friend in these cases. So the probability of any trigger firing is like 2/3. See what that sounds like, say, with a bit of piano-y thing going. So again, that's something a bit later on I'll introduce. I may even change the model during a performance. Let's see what all the elements sound like, roughly mixed. The drums will also make sense a bit with the surface. And I've got control over the balance of the surface and the piano. Piano's a bit loud at the moment over here. And then the chords. The reason for pulling some of it together is just to see if this sound makes any sense. It's a bit too snary, so I'm going to see if there's anything else. So I might, something a bit sort of, not distorted, but a bit different. One day I'll have to learn the models of drum 2, because I always tend to do them just randomly fiddling and going, right, that sounds okay. Okay, so that sounds okay. I think it's probably what we had. Just needs less probability of firing, so let's take it right down to 20% chance of firing. So when I do bring it in, it's just going to be way in the background there. Kind of cool listening to these traffic noises over this. I might leave them in when I go into performance mode. I leave the mic running anyway, so it'd be kind of fun to see if any of them are incorporated. I'm just going to make sure that things like me rubbing and patching, turning things, I suppose turning knobs won't make the noise, but I can potentially make a noise. So I think we're almost ready for a performance. The tools at my disposal are obviously audio volumes, turning things in and out completely, bringing in the bass elements, and then playing this live. I mean, it might be a nice start in itself, just a piano doing this regular, I think that's seven steps, so that's going to be nice and odd. Occasionally I can change or add a couple of notes. Right, I think we're ready. Obviously the granulator over here, the GoPro can hopefully see it. Are you still running GoPro? Yeah. Oh, we've got loads of sun flare on the top. Okay. So the granulator I'll bring in every now and then, and alter the reverb amount. So let's go for it. Performance, Wentworth Falls Lake, Ambient, patch from scratch, performance. And thanks for listening.